position has gone to car number 2, Alan Grice and Graham Crosby in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. From position number 2, car number 3, Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst in the JPS BMW. From 3, car number 11, a new car just built by Larry Perkins and Bill O'Brien, the Everlast Commodore. From position number 4, car number 30, Terry Shield and John Bow, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Position number 525, Graham Bowkett and Ken Bagent in a Nissan. From 624, Bartlett and Bagent in a Nissan Skyline. From position number 7, Brian Callahan and Barry Graham in a Commodore. From position 826, Tony Noske and Gary Rush, the Speedway connection in a Commodore. From 9, car number 14, reliable Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley in a Nissan Skyline. Out of position number 10 is Tony Cabbage and Ken Davidson in a Commodore. From 1143, Graham Lorimer and John Sachs in a BMW M3. And rounding out the top dozen, car number 42, Gerald Kay in a Commodore. And lights now turn to green, and they're off and racing, and Richards has won an absolute monster over the field. And Tony Noske, Gary Rush car getting up quickly, but Perkins down on the inside. Richards locks up a break. Grice working away on the inside there as they swing through onto the Thunderdome for the first time. And as they come off there sideways, you'll find it'll be Larry Perkins, the race leader from Jimmy Richards. Then, of course, the Shield-Bow combination in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Alan Grice up to 4th, but just look at Larry Perkins' sprint and the Everlast Commodore as they work their way onto the tri-oval for the first time.
This is a brand new car built by Larry Perkins and his team of engineers, including Neil Burns for Bill O'Brien, a VL Commodore in the Everlast colours, and a great lead so far from Larry Perkins as they go down through turn 3. The car just starting to creep sideways a little while he was high on the bowl. Richards charging along. Alan Grice now moves up to 3rd place in the Bob Jane T-Mart's entry, and John Bow dropping back into 4th.
Well, that's where I'd expect Grice to make up ground next time onto the oval. He didn't have a good start at all. Perkins was away very quickly, and so too was Tony Noske. But there's Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW M3. Grice sits just behind him in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. They've opened up a bit of a gap over the rest of the field as they head up the riser for the first time. And Grice starting to get on even terms now and pressuring Jimmy Richards in the little M3.
Grice charging. V8 Commodore in behind the 4-cylinder fuel-injected BMW. The driver and car combination that picked up the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship in '87. But these long open spaces on the new Thunderdome really do suit the Holdens. And Grice getting right into the back of Jim Richards. Now comes out of the right-hander onto the straight, and Grice up onto the outside of him. Side by side as they cross the start-finish line area. Grice switching to the inside. John Bow still in 4th as they all chase Larry Perkins.
Once again, diving into the left-hander that brings them into Thunderdome. Good passing move on the inside from Grice. Larry Perkins in the Everlast Commodore. Tail happy, gets out of the turn. Alan Grice now makes it up into 2nd spot, clear of Jimmy Richards. They work the banks now onto Thunderdome, with Perkins' car sounding a treat. Grice car exactly the same.
Pole position, a time of 1:45.74. Oh, and really plunging on the inside here of Larry Perkins, sideways as he tries to go to the lead. He had it for about 0.2 of a second and threw it away, and back into 2nd place once again.
So, coming back onto start finishing straight again. Larry Perkins, mirrors full of Alan Grice and the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. And there they go, down into the left-hander. Keep an eye on that gap back to Jimmy Richards in 3rd spot, as once again they work onto the back straight of the oval. Here's Grice again down on the inside through the tri-oval on Larry Perkins. Door handle to door handle as they sweep up into the top turn. And Grice goes through on the inside at Thunderdome to take over the lead in the Super 300. Back on to the left-hander, takes him onto the road course. And next time around, it'll be Grice leading the race for the first time.
This is only the 2nd competitive outing for John Bow in the Peter Jackson team. He ran at the grand final of the Touring Car Championship at Oran Park, and it was in this car but carrying another number, car number 60. Bow copped it from all sides, and that time up on 2 wheels as he came through the left-hander, just belting the ripple strips, which are pretty tall here.
Let's recap the placings for you as they stand on the Castrol scoreboard. The race leader is Alan Grice in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. 2nd, Larry Perkins in car number 11. And 3rd, gentleman Jim Richards in the JPS BMW. Of the Bob Jane T-Mart's Yokohama 300K race. And it's the Lusty Brothers Commodore which has popped a tyre, and he's heading back into the pits. Actually, the race has been free of incidents, but obviously in line for a new wheel and tyre, the Lusty Brothers Commodore V8. Jimmy Richards, car number 3, continues to run third in the race, heading back on the inside.
There's the man that's going so well, Alan Grice, car number 2, Bob Jane T-Mart's VL model Commodore, with the gap over Larry Perkins of
3.3.
So that's now extending. And if anything, I think that Jim Richards is starting to just get a little closer to the back of Larry Perkins.
Gricey sweeping back onto the start-finishing straight, having put a lap on Gerald Kay. Larry Perkins moves up there. You can see the split back to Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW. I'm not quite sure if the good old boys would go along with this, but this is a sand trap Aussie style, and they're now trying to work out whether or not Gerald Kay, who has bunkered the Commodore in the sand trap, can be towed out. We'll just follow the fortunes here. They've got a good stretch on. He's got more sand under that than you'd find at Bondi Beach in the middle of summer. I'm just hoping that cable didn't snap when the official jumped over it. Trouble in the pits for Barry Graham, car number 47, the Mobile Concrete Pumping Services car. Dennis Johnson there, wrenchman for the team.
49 laps to go. Alan Grice, the leader, from Larry Perkins, and in third position, Jim Richards. And the three of them are all starting to just bunch up a little bit once more. We'll get those gaps for you the next time through.
I think it's safe to say that the edge has gone off the tyres on the Commodores, and Jim is able to take advantage of that.
He's been stalking Larry Perkins for probably the last 10 laps, pegging away. There was, I think, a 3+ gap for a while, and it's down to 1.5 at the moment, and diminishing. So Larry Perkins still running second in the Everlast Commodore, but closing all the time is Jimmy Richards, the 1987 Australian Touring Car Champ in the JPS BMW M3. And Grice hasn't got away from Perkins at all. In fact, everything is falling back into the hands of Jimmy Richards at this stage. If he can keep harassing the two Commodore drivers up front, he'll eventually work his way past them, probably on the inside on the bowl.
Larry also carrying new Holden Motorsport logo on the back of the car, officially named recently as one of their lead drivers. John, you can probably expand on that for us.
Yes, well, that's true. And
trouble for Alan Grice, car number 2, the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore, and he's gone off the circuit and bunkered the V8. So problems for Gricey. Gets out, takes a look at it, and the race has now gone away from the man who had it all locked up. And now the drama as Larry Perkins inherits the lead in the Super 300 from Calder Park, but going out after him is Jimmy Richards, the Australian Touring Car Champion. Coming down the start-finishing straight, ready to put a lap on Tony Noski, who is running 9th on the road at the moment. As they sprint up into the next turn, Perkins goes in very high on the banks. Richards clings to the inside, closes all the time as they come through here, and they'll be working their way back through the left-hander. Oh, and Richards getting a little sideways that time. They take Lusty on the way through. Jim didn't want to lose part of the momentum there, because he's got plenty of pressure going on Larry Perkins at this stage. Here's Alan Grice back into the pit area after problems of going off. Probably a set of tyres for Grice. We'll see whether there's a driver change with Graham Crosby. No, Grice elects to stay in the car. Very disappointed, Alan Grice. So Perkins still in the race lead, and of course he was running second until Alan Grice developed problems, and with Alan Grice in the pits is Neil Crompton.
It's a little chilly here in Melbourne today, and things have just turned even chillier for Alan Grice, because he's standing here copping plenty of breeze. Gricey, what was the problem with the Commodore?
It just broke a steering bolt, a bolt that holds the steering arm onto the suspension. Just broke in the let go in the middle of the corner down there.
So coming off the oval again, back onto the road course, Larry Perkins, but Jimmy Richards applying plenty of pressure. Looks for a little gap down here on the inside, keeps the needle on, yes, and does it, and takes Larry Perkins. A superb drive there on the inside from Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW, and for the first time today, he takes the lead in the Calder Park Super 300. And problems for one of the New Zealand entered Nissan Skylines coming into the pit area. Looks like a blown turbo. and it's the 24 car, Kent Bajent, that was running fourth on the road. So a blown turbo, Bajent into the pit area. His teammate, Graham Bowcat, still running third at the moment. That is not good news, though, for Kent Bajent. Cameraman Tim Maloney suspended out the side of Bob Jane's Calder Park chopper. Aerial views of the twin track complex today, being used for the first time for the Super 300. Positions on the road at the moment: Jim Richards, the race leader in car number 3. Larry Perkins, second in the Everlast Commodore. Third is Graham Bowcat, and fourth is John Bow in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. In the Super 300 from Calder Park, John Bow, car number 30, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Fourth on the road, and John getting to grips with the Skyline. Although he's not quite that fond of the oval, as I understand, Neil Crompton.
He was saying earlier on that with only about 20-odd laps of practice in the last couple of days, he finds it very unnerving to come to terms with it. And the car moving around a little bit, speeds much higher than he's been used to in that car, bearing in mind that he's only had one drive, as Tony Noske and Graham Lorham have both come to the pits. They were engrossed in a battle on track just a few moments ago. Gary Rush standing by to get in the car, and that leaves Murray Carter well clear of these two.
Race leader Jim Richards heads through Glowweave Corner and into the pits, and he's already got a tyre, has come straight off the rim. So Richards limps down pit lane in car number 3, the JPS BMW. And Larry Perkins whizzes across the line to take back the lead in the Super 300 at Calder Park Thunderdome this afternoon. Just when Jim appeared to have it all locked up, no problems whatsoever. He's giving the rim a good working over, let me tell you, as he comes into the pits.
As I suggested earlier, Mike, this is the first time, obviously, that they've had a 300-kilometre distance event on this circuit, and the left side tyres really take a lot of load on the banking, and it appears that Jim mistimed that pit stop by a lap or so.
Well, Frank Gardner and the JPS team servicing the car. Tony Longhurst now in the machine for the run to the checkered flag. Keeping in mind the race leader Larry Perkins has yet to pit. There's Jimmy Richards, the Australian touring car champion. Might have been due in a lap or so back. Well, he's in now. He didn't really come in under the circumstances that he'd hoped for.
Jim, that was a pretty hairy moment when you lost that tyre. Well, I felt I had a flat tyre, so I was going to come in that lap anyway, so I knew it was flat, so it was just a matter of sort of hanging on to the pits.
It's quite evident that the load factors on rear tyres through the bowl is perhaps catching a few people by surprise.
No, ours was just a puncture. It wasn't worn out, so no, our car's okay for tyres, no problem.
Car number 11 is Larry Perkins, and Larry is now headed to the pits, where he will pass over to Bill O'Brien, and there we have a problem. It's Graham Bowcat in the privately entered Nissan Skyline from New Zealand. That's why the lights were on in the oval, to indicate that he's either struck the wall or spun off the racetrack down on the inside line. So Larry Perkins in the pits. The servicing going on to the car. He's going to stay in the car by the look of things. Guys from the crew activated. Looks like Bill O'Brien will have a turn at the rear. Jim Richards and stay in there until about the second or third last lap and just call in to give him a run. So Larry Perkins now back in the field. And while all the pit stops were taking place, it was John Bow, in fact, in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, car number 30, that has gone through to take over the lead. Now coming into the pit area is the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, car number 30, race leader John Bow, coming in to hand over to Terry Shield. And in only a matter of laps, that is going to open the race wide up, because it'll put Jim Richards almost back in front. Coming back onto the start-finishing straight, Tony Longhurst in the JPS BMW number 3, and there in the background is lightning Larry Perkins in the Everlast Commodore. About 3 seconds or so gap between the two drivers as they head down the front straight.
That's correct. He's just under 3 seconds, in fact, Mike, 2.7.
Well, he's gaining, so this race has still got a fair way to go and a lot of interest still in it. Terry Shield is in third place. Let's go to the pits now and Neil Crompton.
Talking a few moments ago, Mike, about Larry Perkins, just down to my left-hand side here, I've got the Dunlop tyre that came off the rear of Larry's car, and notice pretty substantial flat spot on the tyre, and look at the way the thing's starting to delaminate. Now, we saw that situation with Richards before where it started to shed rubber, and quite obviously the bowl is really carving these tyres up.
Thank you, Neil Crompton. Coming on to the oval now, Larry Perkins warming to the BM3. He slips down on the inside. It's door handle to door handle, and the veteran Larry Perkins takes Tony Longhurst. Back goes the lead to the Commodore V8 in the Super 300 this afternoon at Calder Park. So the Everlast Commodore really sprinting away at this stage, John Harvey.
He certainly is. That was a good move. It was predictable, but here's Tony, got him on the inside again.
Well, they're going to play cat and mouse then for a few laps. Perkins tries to slip down the inside. Tony will cover all doors. It'll be the widest BMW M3 you've ever seen for about 5 or 6 laps.
I think we could see the positions changing over the next couple of laps a number of times until the tyre situation is sorted out.
So what you're suggesting is it's only a matter of time.
Well, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, I think in the tyre situation, Tony will have the advantage ultimately.
Still looks happy, doesn't he?
Yeah, Larry's game, I'd say, would be to put as much pressure on Tony as he can and hopefully force him into some sort of error where he maybe punches a tyre or has to stop or do something. So it equals up a little when Larry makes his stop. That's all he can do.
Down the oval, Perkins goes back on the inside of Tony Longhurst. Now, will he remember what happened last time as they swing off here and shut the gate down and get on the binders so he doesn't allow Tony back on the inside? Going to keep him nice and wide this time. So Tony playing around here with Larry Perkins. Will try and duck back to the inside. Couldn't handle it, so Perkins back in front. And now he finds himself under pressure as young Longhurst attacks him under brakes. Problems for the Lusty brothers and their V8 Commodore. It's had an off or two. It's been in the pits a couple of occasions, and they've buried it in the kitty litter down at the end of Calder's back.
Joining us in the commentary box, John Bower, who's just done a fairly tough stint in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Your thoughts on Thunderdome?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh, and look at Longhurst. He
this.
just tears straight into the back then of Perkins, has written off the front of the BMW. Perkins has got real damage on the back of the left-hand rear corner of the Commodore. And what an extraordinary manoeuvre. Just, to say the least, an unusual thing to do as he came into the left-hander to go back onto the other circuit. And Longhurst trying to go through on the inside. Let's take a look at that on the Shell Ultra replay. And as they went to the left-hander, Longhurst getting out of control, gets horribly out of shape, punches Larry Perkins in the left rear guard. Larry does a loop and disappears. Tony Longhurst out of business.
And packing up in the pit area, the JPS BMW crew. Even some of the crew members show their disgust. They had this race virtually parcelled up until Tony Longhurst unfortunately punted Larry Perkins and put his own car out of commission. Down through the tri-oval, Larry Perkins is our race leader. And trying to recap the placings on the scoreboard, Perkins in car number 11 leads from Terry Shield in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, and third is Speedway star Gary Rush in Tony Noski's Commodore. Time running out in the 300k Enduro at Calder Park this afternoon. And, of course, 60 seconds behind race leader Larry Perkins is the driver of car number 30, Terry Shield. And keep in mind that Larry Perkins still has to effect a pit stop for a driver change to comply with the race regulations. And on current reckoning, it should probably take about 50 seconds if they are very quick. And that could open the race up as we get down to the final few laps.
It'll be interesting to see when Larry comes in. If Larry comes in about 10 to go, which is what it's 11 to go now, we might have a chance to catch up. But if Larry leaves it till the last few laps, barring mishaps in the pits, I think he really has got the race shot to bits.
Bill O'Brien, who of course owns the car that Larry Perkins is running this afternoon. Bill wouldn't be feeling nervous at all. He's got a brand new car. He's going to have to really do probably 3 or 4 laps of competition, and he will come up a winner. But it all depends when Larry decides he will come in for that pit stop to hand over to Bill O'Brien. And running third on the road in the 300k touring car endurance race from Calder Park this afternoon is the 7-time Sprint Car King of Australia, and that's Gary Rush, and doing a good job in the Commodore. Actually, it's going to be a good result for Commodore if the positions stay the way they are, John Bauer.
Certainly is, Mike. They've come back from a pretty dismal year in the Touring Car Championship, but the longer races seem to suit them. They just keep on going. And it's a very good effort for Gary Rush. He's a mean sprint car driver, and he's a mean Commodore driver.
Yeah. The only thing he wants to do is ask him to change the pavement, tear it off the Thunderdome, put clay down. But he's done a good job, and so too Tony Noske in the Kalari transport car. That car, incidentally, is prepared by Larry Perkins. So Perkins has shown today, demonstrated quite ably. He can come up with cars, V8s, heavy cars that can finish endurance races. That'll be a great boost for Tony Noske and Gary Rush, who plan on doing the Castrol 500. Then, of course, the big one of the 1987 calendar, the World Touring Car Championship race, the James Hardy 1000 from Bathurst. And, of course, here a week later, the round at Calder Park. Rush goes back off the Speedway Bowl, back onto the course, running in third and holding that down very solidly. Coming across the line now, headlights blazing, Larry Perkins signalling the pits. He'll be in next time to hand over the car to Bill O'Brien for a lap-and-a-half sprint to the flag. So Perkins, well controlled in this situation, goes on to the oval. Straight ahead into Glow Weave, where he makes the run into the pit area, holding a 60 to 65 second buffer. Here comes Larry Perkins, and accelerating like it was on Thunderdome.
Larry Perkins certainly coming to the pits in the Everlast VL Commodore and rocketing down towards the pit lane. Bill O'Brien standing by. Larry Perkins flings his driving gloves off. They've come off in the pit lane. Bill O'Brien jumps in the car. LP was out very quickly. He had the belts off. The tyres on the car are looking in fairly reasonable condition, as you can see. O'Brien going in quite smoothly. They've been in the pits so far for 12 seconds, excluding the time it took to get in there. Neil Burns, the team manager for the Everlast NZT Perkins operation. The car now fires to life. 21 seconds, 22 seconds. Terry Shield is just coming up towards the S's and about to approach Glowweave. They are going to have to work quicker than this. Now Bill O'Brien leaves the pits in a time of 32 seconds, and if they can keep it glued up here, Mike Raymond, they've got the race won.
This one is far from over, because Bill O'Brien heads out in a car that he has not got one lap on today, and Terry Shield is closing like a man possessed in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. It all rests on Bill O'Brien as he heads onto the bowl this time to pick up the pace. Crowd really warming to what is going to be a nail-biting finish to this, the Calder Park 300 endurance car race. Onto the Super Bowl. There's Perkins, wondering whether or not that pit stop was quick enough to get by with. Neil Burns moves in behind him to say, well done, boss. In the meantime, though, Bill O'Brien in car number 11, the Everlast Commodore V8, heads down onto the tri-oval. They'll be coming round to take the signal the next time, and, of course, closing all the time on him will be Terry Shield in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, car number 30. And it is obvious already at this stage he's taking it very cautious, as down on the inside goes Terry Shield in car number 30.
You beauty.
So John Bauer, who sits with us in the commentary spot after having done the first stint in car number 30, sees that late pit stop, Bill O'Brien. The time it took them to try and get the belts undone, or done up again, I should say, has seen Terry Shield come from nowhere and gather them in. And car number 30, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, heads up the hill, over the top, down to the chicane with Terry Shield, a man who was in a very bad accident at Amaroo Park Raceway only a week ago, and has stepped into the car with Johnny Bauer this afternoon. Bill O'Brien doing his best to try and close up, but they've thrown it away with the late pit stop. There wasn't too much they could do about it. Perkins was out of the car. It just took Bill a little longer to get settled in the car. The corner comes up, the most critical corner of the race. The last corner, the checkered flag about ready to be signalled, and across the line, Terry Shield of New South Wales will take the 300 touring car endurance race with John Bauer here for Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Bill O'Brien, the hard luck story in the last lap of the half, will take second spot, and third place, of course, will go to Gary Rush and Tony Noske in a Commodore. What a finish to this afternoon's 300 touring car endurance race. Terry Shield in the last lap getting up to beat Bill O'Brien after Larry Perkins had it won 65 seconds in front.